Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, another try for a green future. State Senate President Pro Tem Mimi Stewart tells us how her bill would fund projects to address climate change in our state.
Our citizens deserve to have clean air, clean land, clean water. And our citizens are rising up and saying you must do something about the climate.
And planting of the Navajo language seed. A local Dene language nest revitalizes an indigenous spoken word for future generations. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us. I'm executive producer Jeff Proctor. We've got a busy show this week. An audit report last fall on wasteful spending by the president and others at Western New Mexico University has decimated the Silver City School's leadership, including all but one of its regents. Coming up in the second half of today's show, senior producer Lou DeVizio asks State Senator Gabriel Ramos why it's taking so long to replace the decision makers at Western. House Bill 11, the proposed Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, inched forward this week. Later in today's show, we hear from an expert who tells us about changes to the bill during this session. But first, we turn our attention to one of the only climate bills left standing in Santa Fe. Senate Bill 83 passed through the Senate on a party line vote last week, with all Democrats in favor. The bill would create a state fund that would pay for projects in line with the governor's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. State Republicans hate the bill. Senator Jim Townsend of Artesia told the Santa Fe New Mexican it amounts to a, quote, direct attack on his district. Politics correspondent Gwyneth Doland had a moment earlier this week to talk to Senator Mimi Stewart, the bill's sponsor, about her push for climate legislation, oil and gas regulations, education, and more. Here's Gwyneth.
Senator Mimi Stewart, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Gwyneth.
I want to start with a package of climate-related proposals that you have aimed at reducing pollution and the impacts of pollution and climate-related issues on communities in New Mexico. There's been a lot of pushback from Republicans on this. They say that the move would bite the hand that feeds us, that by these and some other moves that would fight back against the oil and gas industry, these could have really negative effects on future budgets, and we've seen that in the past, having to go back and shake the sofa cushions for whatever change is left over to keep the lights on, right? So why is now the right time to push this agenda?
So when the governor came in 2019, she understands and is concerned about climate change, as I am, and she did an executive order that got her state agencies to all work on this issue. And they've been doing that, mainly the Environment Department, but also Energy and Minerals and others. So she has really garnered support and tasked her agencies with working on this issue. So we've been doing a lot of things. The methane rules were phenomenal. Even though the industry fought the methane rules tooth and nail, production doubled during that time with the methane rules. These three bills that are dedicated to mitigating or adapting climate change. Senate Bill 4. Senate Bill 4 set up a regulatory structure for business, for all of us, to continue to work on greenhouse gas emissions. That is the biggest driver of climate change, especially methane, which stays in the air 80 times longer than CO2. Both of those gases and other gases, mainly produced by oil and gas, but also by transportation and ag and building, need to be lowered in New Mexico. And that's what the governor said. Let's work towards lowering the greenhouse gas emissions. So we've moved the needle. We're 29% less greenhouse gas emissions. Her goal is to have 45% less by 2030 based on 2005. And that's just a marker that everyone uses because it was really pre-Permian Basin. So those goals and limits are achievable. We're all doing it. We're all working on it. But unless you put them in statute and you require more monitoring and more progress reports, we're not going to get anywhere. And our citizens deserve to have clean air, clean land, clean water. And our citizens are rising up and saying you must do something about the climate impacts in New Mexico. That's the purpose of the second bill. The second bill, Senate Bill 48, is a community benefits fund. There's about $300 million in there through the budget to send to communities for adaptation or mitigation of climate issues. Think Roswell, that got in 5 hours all the rain they're supposed to get in an entire year. It wiped out roads, bridges, businesses. People were stuck in their community center. They had to climb up on the top of the roof. We need to prepare for this climate crisis that we're in. And communities all over the state have asked for funding. And the final bill is an innovation of state government, and it gives money to our state agencies to help the communities.
Well, let me ask you about that community benefit part, because it kind of reminds me of capital outlay, where communities come and say, hey, we want these projects in our communities. But what we've seen with capital outlay historically is that a lot of the projects aren't ready to go, the money's never spent, and it just ends up sitting in this account waiting to be spent, and it kind of gets thrown around willy-nilly. So what accountability is there that this money is going to be spent, and that it's going to, that we're going to get reports back on how successful those things are?
Well, there's a requirement in the bill that if you get money from the benefit fund, you have to report every year. And it has to be looked at in the interim through the legislature. So I'm assuming it's going to be the Legislative Finance Committee. But we have 2 billion projects, shovel-ready projects, all over the state that haven't been funded. Things like $7 million to create a technology for workers who are moving into the renewable energy field. Up in San Juan, they've asked for that. All over the state, we have requests for solar, for wind, for the infrastructure for our electric vehicles. We have school districts all over the state that want to buy electric school buses. There's a significant amount of funding for that and the infrastructure needed. We're on a move to electrify our transportation. We need money for that infrastructure, and that's...
Let me ask you about those electric school buses, because you know there's a big debate among New Mexicans about electric vehicles, right? Yeah. People in Albuquerque and in Santa Fe love it. They can just zip to work and back. They have enough charge. It's great, no problem. But people in rural areas say, why are we spending money on this? This doesn't work for us and the way that we drive and in our communities. So what is the argument for electric school buses outside of the metro area?
There's a huge argument for it. Electric school buses don't have diesel fumes polluting the air. They sit there idling where kids are lined up next to it, breathing that in. We have the highest percentage of kids with asthma of any surrounding state. It's quiet. They're quiet. You can hear the kids. You can hear the driver. You can hear yourself think. You could even read a book on an electric school bus. The districts want it. And electrification of the infrastructure is what this Community Benefits Fund will help. But it will also help buy electric school buses. So this is for rural and urban. It's for all over the state. And so we did get a lot of federal funding to put in chargers and electric vehicle stations all over the state. Some of that may be drying up for obvious reasons, but we have money and we want to move forward with this, even the urban areas. Yeah, there's some naysayers. There's always naysayers.
Well, I want to stick with education for a minute, because you are also sponsoring a bill about the science of reading. What are you trying to do?
Gwyneth, we've spent about $20 million a year for the last 5 years to try to educate teachers on how to teach reading, because they're not getting it in college. And what these teachers are saying is, oh my God, I finally know how to teach reading. The scores we're seeing Roswell, their English language learners are at 70%. Reading, have you ever heard that number? I hadn't. So when we had the bill in committee, we had 29 teachers from all over this state saying how incredible it is to learn actually how to teach reading, because the science of reading focuses on kids and how they actually learn to read. Now, structured literacy is the method that we use, but you use that in any language. In Roswell, the bilingual teachers are using structured literacy, and those bilingual students are beating everybody else in their proficiency level in reading. So we had Dr. Linda Cavazos, who is a major bilingual educator, who's written a 32-page booklet on structured literacy in bilingual classrooms. So we have proof that this is actually will get us out of that hole. Especially the Yazzie Martinez students are the ones that are just surging ahead when you use structured literacy. So the bill required the colleges of education to actually teach teachers how to teach reading according to the science of how kids learn through what's called structured literacy. And the House Education Committee doesn't even want to hear it.
Well, you're a retired educator, so I know you know how hard it is to be a teacher right now with all of the requirements, preparing for all the standardized tests. Is this just throwing more on overworked, overburdened teachers?
Oh, not at all. We've spent 5 years. We started with first grade, then we added K and second grade teachers, then third and fourth. Now we're on fourth and fifth. They're all saying this is the best professional development I've ever had. It takes about 2 years to learn it. There were some people who didn't like it. We started it during the pandemic, but our kids can't wait. The ability to read is a human right. It's a right. It's our job in education. So on the contrary, they're happy.
Let me shift your attention to higher ed right now. And you mentioned earlier that the state might need to be preparing for some potential cuts from the federal government. We saw the Trump administration recently yank back $400 million in federal grants and programs from Columbia University in retaliation for its toleration of Palestinian protests. New Mexico has been very pro-DEI, kind of historically and especially lately. There is a bill, the legislature's kind of doubling down on DEI, now wanting to add a chief diversity officer to the state. Are you anxious that this will make us more of a target for cuts coming from the White House?
I'm worried about that. I'm very worried about it. And yet, diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important to New Mexicans. I mean, we're a multicultural state, a multilingual state. If anybody has diversity, it's New Mexico. And we need to be able to ensure that people feel like there's equitable distribution of programs, of funding, job opportunities, housing opportunities. All of that is important to New Mexicans. So we're kind of going to be in this balancing of making sure we ensure diversity, equity, inclusion in our programming, in our job searches, et cetera, without getting the ire of the federal government. I don't know how it's going to work, Gwyneth. I don't know if we're going to be successful.
Well, President Trump has framed this in a different way, saying that, ending DEI programs are a priority because these are, quote, forced, illegal, and immoral discrimination programs. So what I want to know is, what is the legislature doing to protect New Mexicans and their jobs from cuts in Washington? And what are you doing to protect higher ed?
What a big question. So we have several bills moving through the session that are designed to protect women's reproductive health care information in particular, to protect our very diverse population, our LGBT community, our BIPOC community. It's important that they feel safe and that they live in a state that they love and can grow in. So it's in a lot of legislation. It's not big and bold and obvious, because for the obvious reasons, we don't want it to be big and bold and obvious. But we are well aware of it, and we are thinking about it as we do the budget and in the bills we pass and in the programs we pass.
As you probably know, I teach at UNM. UNM's a Research One university. I don't know what we would do if we lost $400 million in National Science Foundation grants. What would you expect to see from a university faced with an economic disaster of politically targeted cuts? Are they going to roll over and play ball with the Trump administration?
What we are doing, Gwyneth, is putting funds that we can into trust funds to prepare for cuts like that, because we don't want higher ed to be cut. Higher ed is very important to New Mexico, and UNM in particular. It's really our flagship university. So we are squirreling money away into funds that we could use if something like that happened. We're already preparing for a special session later this year where we might have to do that. We have lots of funds that we can put money into, and we're busy squirreling it away for this very possible and probable cuts from the federal government.
Last thing, and on higher ed, about the regents. The process has been scrutinized a lot lately in the wake of problems at Western, and the governor nominating her brother to be a regent at Highlands, only for him to step back. As of today, there are still no public nominees for the 4 remaining board positions at Western. Is the process for nominating these regents flawed?
We've been talking about this for years. I like the idea of a board over all of them, but that hasn't passed. We have passed better training for regents. The Western regents certainly showed that they need a little bit more fiduciary information about what their job is. So we're increasing the training, and it's my understanding that the Rules Committee is going to get the regent suggestions from the governor this week. So we've got another week left. We really have to focus on regent confirmation because they can't work unless they're confirmed. Other positions that we have to confirm can work until they're confirmed. So that's why we have to focus on regents. So the governor knows that. She knows we've got a week and a half. We will have those regents, and we will hear them as soon as we get them.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gwyneth.
I've served on the Senate before. I've never seen anyone governor take so time, or the governor we currently have take so much time to appoint a board of regents. I know that we've had our ups and downs at Western New Mexico University, and I'm sure she's trying to pick the right person, but we should have already been prepped to put someone in.
That interview with State Senator Gabriel Ramos will air in about 30 minutes. Language revitalization. That's the focus of this month's episode of Indigenously Positive, our collaboration with New Mexico in Depth. Correspondent Bella Davis visited an Albuquerque immersion program that is growing new speakers of the Dene language. Here's Bella.
There are 8 languages indigenous to New Mexico, and after a long history of genocidal policies, there's been a dramatic decline in the number of speakers. In this episode of Indigenously Positive, we're exploring some of the work happening to push back against that loss and create more speakers of the Navajo language, Dene Bizad. That brought us to a Dene language nest in Albuquerque, where children are fully immersed in the language.
I translate it to the planting of language. Some people call it the planting of the language seed, but Saad is language, Kedilya is the act of planting. We're trying to produce first language speakers. That's our main goal, our main priority, is to have these families that come in, and then the infants, between 2 and 3 months. 6-7 years ago, we started this work, through discussions between myself and my older sister, Mary Whitehair Fraser. And then we added on Dr. Chi,
You're fine.
Dr. Lee, which kind of formed our core group.
Dr. Lee and Dr. Chi are on the Language Nest Board of Directors, and they're also part of a team of Diné professors at the University of New Mexico focused on language revitalization. One of the things they're studying is the connection between learning the language and overall well-being.
Tiffany Lee, Nishia, de Bethlehem Nishla, Natlana Bashashin, Senjukina Dashatedo, Natlana Dashanale, Tonsilla de Nasha, the Dawa de Neto Lakota Sana Nishla.
Melvitha Chi Nishia, Tana Bitli Nishla, Kiltachini Bashashin, Hawantlan Dashache Ishi, Dashanale, Beg El Gaidan Nasha.
We want Navajo to be their first language. English is on the come either way. You know, we don't got no say over that. And kind of prioritizing our language and our culture so that these little ones, you know, get a chance to learn a language and a culture their parents and grandparents didn't learn. So we limit English in there, so no English. You can speak Spanish, you can speak Kers, you can speak Filipino, you can speak any other language in there except English.
I mean, I've always been in support of like kind of grow slower, right? Grow slower, fewer babies, and then to kind of move them through the process and bring them in at when they're infants.
Hearing my mother and some of my aunts later on in life talking about how they wish they had taught their children more Navajo, and I never blame them because there's so many influences on why a child picks up a certain language in a colonial environment, right? In an environment that's always oppressed our language.
My research interest is primarily on child language acquisition of Navajo. So, you know, we want to learn things about, you know, how did children begin to learn Navajo? Like, how do they access the language? Like, what do they pay attention to? And if we can answer some of those questions there, you know, and document that, you know, that information down the road could then be, I think it could be then be fed back into the second language acquisition classroom, right?
Ako rigin dal nishigiya. Han zachi thatin dahaljan. Tisdin dahaljan datse. Be intantkin. Kwa hasin tsogo. Chini yaje kent ya circle time de no. Be kwa intantkin. Hala kwa sargi ye yadalt do hasin tsogo di. Be nantkinigi hitahol ahalto. Ako ya kwa pa hadet bisin den kwa dal nishgi nek acha hitahol ahigi hasin tsogo be bisato ye yadal do kwa chinyaj betato nahas trago den tikino ta za khatin destin dahaljen judat khut enta il so kujida zade dat nitken such a do na wait which ya do banago ya do khilna nada ahoda da huit khasta akho hot an khilkhaz.
Because we're involving young children, so it involves their parents, we're really seeing the impact their children learning Navajo has on the whole family, particularly their parents, and just the connection that they feel as well. And then they're learning Navajo alongside, you know, in a way, but their children might progress further than they will, and they're really proud of that.
Related to language, the Nebazad, you know, children learning to speak, training teachers is another one. And then, you know, looking at things like, you know, why is the Nebazad good for us, language and wellness, right? And yeah, I've just always been in Navajo, in the Nebazad, right?
We require our parents anywhere from 80 to 100 hours a year. So we've been at it for about 3 years. I think there's some parents that got into their 3rd year of language classes now. What we expect, what we want, so, which is 85% attendance, language class hours, you know, being part of the community, having a good behavior and attitude, you know, and then having a community building mindset, and, you know, attending workshops and stuff like that. So we're just trying to find an efficient and successful way to also produce second language learners, second language speakers, whether it's parents, grandparents, whether it's our caretakers. So we've got second language learners all through the program too. That are learning the language and becoming proficient in it.
A lot of research in the past has been very negative towards Native people. It's done a lot of harm in our communities. Now, this research is not extractive. We're not trying to take knowledge and just make our name become famous on it.
Oh gosh.
No, we're trying to do research that's, we are done that, and we know that this is of value to our own people. Language is very highly respected and valued, and this is a way to really put some of those ideas about the impact of language into practice and schooling. And we understand that schooling isn't the only place you can learn Navajo and shouldn't be the only place you learn Navajo, but right now it's a domain where children are there most of the day, and we have these good programs that can really help. But we want to expand that to outside school settings and into families and communities and other kinds of programs.
The Nabaza don dani tkendan here. To alchiniyaj benago. Aro it obich yatel tike. To one dani tkenda. Akut and lakuna and da lishi away ya da halyaniki a slot the Nabaza yitahos. To ye yatal to they did sat the handler at Bestadi Nisho. Kare Hashil Sogo. Ye yadas kito, they did Dazli Akho Edo Sato Ahut Quabisan de Nish Akho Quasto Hut La Nana.
Even though Navajo is described as, has a high number of speakers, there's a lot of fluent speakers, it still requires, a lot of work, a lot of support, and to continue to, continue to contribute so that the language is spoken by future generations down the way, great-grandchildren status kind of thing, Like what can we do, what can we leave for them, and how can we do that, and education is a tool to do that, research is a tool to do that.
We'll have more episodes in the Indigenously Positive series in the months ahead. For more than a decade, Levi Monagle has represented survivors of Catholic sexual abuse. That includes about 140 cases exposed during the recent bankruptcy proceedings against the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. During that time, the church created a public list of 83 credibly accused priests. Monagle and others say that list is woefully incomplete. Searchlight New Mexico's Joshua Bowling investigated the gaps in the list for a story he published last month. He sat down with Monagle in our studio this week to talk about why the Catholic Church's claims of a new era in transparency around priest sex abuse don't stack all the way up.
Levi Monagle, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start our conversation with kind of some history. You've represented the survivors of Catholic sex abuse for over 10 years now. Most recently during the Archdiocese of Santa Fe's bankruptcy proceedings, you represented about 140 survivors through that case. Documenting abusers in a public fashion has always been something of a challenge. So from where you're sitting, where do you see things now?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that this is a debate that's happening in, diocesan litigation around the country and diocesan bankruptcies around the country. There is this big open question of what happens to records of clergy sexual abuse, what happens with allegations against perpetrators made in the course of bankruptcies. And I think it's something of a crossroads, right, for the modern Catholic Church to decide, how far to lean into an ethos of transparency or how closely to adhere to an unfortunately long history of shielding damaging or sensitive information from public view.
Sure. So locally here, the Archdiocese of Santa Fe has its credibly accused list, which has the lists of priests and other clergy workers whom the church is deemed to be credibly accused of abusing minors. Currently, there are 83 priests named on that main list, but you've settled cases involving allegations against nearly 60 additional priests, and the church has refused to even consider adding those names to the list, despite paying millions of dollars during the bankruptcy proceedings to settle those cases. Why do you think that is?
I think that, you know, the 60 names you're referring to, these are all names that came up in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe bankruptcy. Claims were made, claims of abuse were made involving these individuals. And I think the understanding of the creditors committee, who was making decisions on behalf of the claimant body through that bankruptcy, understood that the names of those individuals would be added to the credibly accused list at the conclusion of the bankruptcy process. That didn't happen ultimately. We went to court on behalf of one survivor to try to force the Archdiocese to uphold what we believed was a cut and dried commitment made through the bankruptcy, and the judge ultimately disagreed with us and said that there was ambiguity in the language of the bankruptcy plan that allowed the Archdiocese to adhere to its traditional model, which was to retain full control over which names it added or didn't add to its list, and to handle that process through what's called its independent review board. So I think for us, that was a disappointment, obviously, right? Because the goal of our client, this abuse survivor, was to have the name of the priest who abused her, a priest named Richard Spellman, added to this list. Sure. And this is something that is tremendously important to a lot of abuse survivors, to have the validation of the truth of their allegations, to basically have it recognized by the church that what I've said about this priest, what I've been through, this is the truth. What we saw from the Archdiocese, in my opinion, was a desire to maintain something of a monopoly over the truth-telling function in this space, basically to assert its role as the ultimate decider of who is credibly accused and who is not. And for many reasons, I think that's problematic, because that has been the role that the Catholic Church in the U.S. has assumed historically, and there was terrible damage done as a result of it, because there was obviously like a fox guarding the hen house sort of model and incentive structure for the church to say for certain priests, regardless of what information they had, regardless of how circumstantially compelling or credible an allegation might be, to say, no, this guy's not credibly accused. So I think it's, if there's an impulse to adhere to historical practices around secrecy or transparency within the Catholic hierarchy, I think that's problematic.
So I want to get to the independent review board and those mechanisms in a minute, but first I want to talk a little bit about transparency and kind of the importance of a list like this. Certainly not everybody on this list is alive. Many of the priests and clergy workers who are named are dead, and your inclusion on the list doesn't necessarily mean that you're being criminally charged with something, right? But beyond the historical record, isn't there some sort of importance to knowing who the living abusers are and where they're working and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, for any living abuser or credibly accused perpetrator, I think that's tremendously important, just as a function of communal safety, to understand that an allegation involving this individual has been vetted or reviewed by an investigative body and found to be credible. I think that, there are many, many examples within the Catholic clergy abuse cases and obviously abuse cases involving other groups of credibly accused individuals slipping under the radar, essentially, and departing from the work they've done, as a priest or a religious individual, and sliding off into some secular field like a school or an adult care facility, a place where vulnerable people reside. And so I think that for living abusers, having this public document listing them as such is a fundamental safety issue. There's also the reality with victims of childhood sexual abuse in the Catholic clergy context is many individuals are so afraid of not being believed when they come forward that in the absence of some public acknowledgement by a diocese that the person who abused them is deemed credibly accused, they won't come forward at all. And I think that the courage that it can give a survivor to know that I'm not the only one who was abused by this individual has really facilitated over the years a lot of first-time disclosures by people who have been abused and really allowed them to break out of a prison of the mind and step forward to get therapy or to get help. That's got to be very confusing.
Sure. You know, so to that end, I want to pull back the curtain a little bit on my reporting that has led up to this. I spent months late last year and early this year untangling why the church was refusing to not just add these names to the list, but even vet these names and consider adding them to the list. And I ultimately got to the point where I needed to ask the Archbishop, John C. Wester, about this. And this is all reflected in my story, which has been published online and with the Albuquerque Journal, but it was a kind of a surprising reaction. At first, the Archbishop insisted to me that I was wrong, and he argued that these priests were, of course, named on the credibly accused list because the church had just paid over $100 million to settle their cases during bankruptcy. And that argument seemed to be based on the logic that the high dollar amount of the settlements suggests that there's some credibility behind the accusations. And after I informed him that he was mistaken and this is not the case, and I had the list in front of me and there's only 83 names on it, he put me on hold for several minutes and came back with a much different answer after that. And so I'm curious, as the attorney who worked on this case, what does that signify to you?
I think I have to acknowledge that there are, reasons specific to a bankruptcy proceeding that might lead an organization like the Archdiocese not to dig too deeply into particular individual claims, that there's a desire by any organization in bankruptcy to get things done at a number that's acceptable to them. And I have heard, I think legitimate responses from deeply intelligent, deeply Catholic people in my life who say the bankruptcy process was not a credibility vetting process the way a normal litigation case would be. And I acknowledge that. I think, though, that Archbishop Wester's response was probably informed by the non-monetary commitments that he remembered making to survivors, right, through the bankruptcy process, including this written agreement to add the names of people accused in the bankruptcy to the credibly accused list. And that there were legal nuances to that his lawyers argued ultimately with the bankruptcy judge, Judge Thuma, that maybe Archbishop Wester wasn't apprised of or didn't recall in the heat of the moment. But I think that his reaction was the intuitive reaction, and then obviously had to be walked back a bit.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about who determines what's credible. Can you walk me through a little bit how the Independent Review Board works for the church?
Yeah, so I believe since the institution of what's called the Dallas Charter in 2002, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops got together and made a series of commitments to improving child safety protocols and among other things, vetting allegations against clergy accused of sexual abuse through what are called independent review boards. And the Independent Review Board for the Archdiocese of Santa Fe has been in effect since shortly after the Dallas Charter was implemented. It's made up of a mixture of lay and religious individuals, primarily, the people with professional expertise in investigations, psychologists, people from different walks of life who work with sort of on-the-ground investigators to gather information when there's an accusation against a clergy member, and then review that information, speak with abuse survivors or alleged abuse survivors, and ultimately take all this information, process it, and make a recommendation to a bishop or an archbishop as to whether or not they believe the allegation is credible. And my understanding is that generally bishops and archbishops accept the recommendations from the internal review boards or the independent review boards. And since the Archdiocese began publishing its list of credibly accused priests in, I think it was 2017, as the independent review board continues to do its work and continues to find certain allegations to be credible, names are added to this public list. The independent review board obviously was doing its work for 2 decades in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, and the credibly accused list that was published by the Archdiocese of Santa Fe was the product of the work done by its IRB. When we were arguing this issue about naming these other 60 priests, who were accused in the bankruptcy, the Archdiocese, through its lawyers, was making the argument that we have always constructed our list based on the work of our independent review board. That's how it's always been. That's how it should continue to be. And, if the language of this plan makes it look like we should be adding names to the list without the involvement of the independent review board, that was never our intention, and we should not be forced to do that. And that's the position that the bankruptcy judge ultimately agreed with. I think the problem at this juncture is Archbishop Wester's indication that these names would not be subject to investigation or review by the independent review board. And if the argument from the Archdiocese in court was, this is our process, this is the process we're going to continue to utilize, to then take the position after the judge has ruled on that basis that we're actually not going to utilize that process at all is very problematic to my mind.
So what about the fact then that you have a mechanism essentially of the church that then investigates the church? Does that give you pause at all? We don't really know a lot publicly about how the IRBs work. We don't necessarily know the names of the people who are on it or even what occupations they come from.
Right, yeah, I mean, in what feels like a long time ago, in years past, I had a lot more information about the composition of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe Independent Review Board at different points in time. Sure. Now that we're no longer in active litigation with the Archdiocese, following the conclusion of the bankruptcy, I'm sort of in the same position as everyone else. There's a little bit of a black box there. Like, I don't know, who's on the board at this point, what professional background they have, or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, anytime a big institution assumes the responsibility of investigating the misdeeds of its own folks, I think there's a little bit of a concern. Like, I think that in the secular space, there's, I think, checks from government and things like that on the kind of internal vetting of misconduct allegations that private companies can engage in. I mean, obviously, I think this issue isn't unique to the Catholic Church. There are plenty of examples of private institutions, secular institutions, relying primarily on the work of internal boards to suss out, misconduct allegations that they have a vested interest in. But again, we're talking about all of this, against the backdrop of what is held out by the church as a new era of transparency, right? And that sort of cognitive dissonance is the thing that I think a lot of people are struggling with. That how can this be a new era if it looks so much like the old one, or in some ways looks worse than the old one, right? If the IRB isn't even going to investigate these allegations. And if it's not really a new era with respect to this kind of transparency, how can we be confident that it's a new era with respect to the handling of like a new abuse allegation.
Levi Monagle, again, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You can read Joshua Bowling's investigation into the names that did make it onto the church's list of credibly accused priests and the ones that didn't. That's at searchlightnm.org. A highly contentious paid family leave bill took another step toward the governor's desk this week. The Senate Tax, Business, and Transportation Committee passed House Bill 11 on Saturday with a narrow 6-4 vote. Next stop, the Senate Finance Committee. Let's head back to the Roundhouse now, where Gwyneth Doland caught up with Tracy McDaniel of the Southwest Women's Law Center. McDaniel has advocated for this proposal for years, and she pushed back this week on concerns that it would make hiring in New Mexico more difficult.
Tracy, we're talking about paid family medical leave. There is a federal Family Medical Leave Act that gives people time off. Why isn't that enough?
Well, the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act that was established in 1993 really is insufficient to support the needs of New Mexico working families. So it provides up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave to people who work for an employer that has 50 or more employees, who has been employed for at least 12 months and has worked for at least 1,250 hours during that 12-month period. For New Mexico, we're a small business state, and only 4% of employers are even required to provide unpaid leave through the FMLA. So this is really an opportunity for us to be able to step in and provide supports that just are not being provided federally for our workers.
We've seen proposals like this here at the Roundhouse for a few years in a row failing. The current version of this has changed a lot. Can you kind of recap for us how this has changed just this session and why?
Yes, so the House sponsors, we are really grateful to them for continuing to work on this, even in the face of the defeats that they've had in previous years. They worked really hard with some of their colleagues to find a solution to get this passed through the House. However, we do have some concerns. Our coalition, we have over 100 organizations and businesses that have come together to work on this. And some of our coalition partners advocate for the rights of people that have severe chronic illnesses like cancers and blood cancers. And we know that 6 weeks just isn't enough time for people to really be able to get the treatment that they need and return to work. That's one concern. Another concern is really around the welcome child benefit and whether the structure of that makes sense for New Mexico families. We really want this to be to work well for all families in New Mexico, and so that's a concern we have, and we've been asking some questions and working toward understanding more about how this is structured.
One of the biggest arguments against this that we've heard from business owners across the state is the worker shortage that it would create. As you just said, New Mexico is a small business state. A lot of these companies don't have very many employees, and if one goes on leave, then they have to find someone else, but there is a shortage of skilled workers. So, how are business owners expected to cope with having employees on leave and trying to find somebody else?
That's a great question, and one that I'm really excited to answer, because I think that this is really a misunderstanding in the bigger picture of passing a Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. So what we know from places that already have established paid family and medical leave programs is that people who are currently on the sidelines, who have caregiving responsibilities or who are dealing with chronic illnesses that have to take time away to travel for appointments, particularly in rural communities, are on the sidelines right now of our workforce. They are not participating in the workforce. And if we want to increase our workforce participation rates, we really need access to this kind of safety net to encourage folks who otherwise wouldn't feel like they could participate to participate. And we've actually seen some research come out that says that if New Mexico implemented a Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, we would have 47,000 additional workers available for work in New Mexico. And so, we really believe that that's one component. And the other component is that when people have the opportunity to take time off for managing a health condition or welcoming a new child, they are much more likely to return to work when they're fully ready to work, be more productive, have higher morale, and we know statistically that they're more likely to be employed with that employer 2 years after the event that caused them to need to take leave. And so we really see this as being about recruitment and retention of high quality employees.
Tracy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks to Gwyneth for another busy week at the Roundhouse. It's also been a busy handful of months for Searchlight New Mexico's Joshua Bowling. Before he dug into the Catholic Church's incomplete list of credibly accused priests, Joshua wrote a series of stories exposing lavish spending by the president of Western New Mexico University. A state audit followed those stories and confirmed more than $360,000 in questionable travel and purchases. The president has since resigned, as have all but one of the school's regents. You heard Senate President Pro Tem Mimi Stewart tell Gwyneth the governor still hasn't nominated anyone for the 4 open positions as we tape this on Thursday. This week, senior producer Lou DeVizio spoke with State Senator Gabriel Ramos, whose Silver City district includes Western, about damage to the school's reputation and why replacing those regents is taking so long.
Senator Gabriel Ramos, thank you so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeVizio. I've been looking forward to this, so thank you.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to check in to get an update on where things stand in the nominating process for the open board seats at Western New Mexico University. What is the status of those seats right now as we tape this on Monday?
Mr. DeVizio, I stood up on the Senate floor 2 weeks ago asking for some Board of Regents. WNMU deserves this board as soon as possible. And I heard as of this morning, after I stood up on the floor again and asked for some more help, and I heard that we're finally getting some nominees. I don't know who they are at this point. I guess you have to be privy to have that information, and I have not received that as of yet. I've been told there's been over 20 applicants since before we even started the session. And I'm just concerned on why have we not gotten an appointment when every other university in the state of New Mexico has gotten a few appointments. Mr. DeVizio, my biggest concern is that we have a young student board of regent making all the decisions at Western New Mexico University as we speak. And that is a big concern of mine. I know this kid, he's a great kid, very knowledgeable kid. But when one person is making all the financial decisions and signing off on documents that normally are passed through a board, that really concerns me. It concerns me that our faculty and all our workers throughout WNMU and our students are being affected. And who knows what the final effect's going to be after not having a board or a president for this amount of time.
Generally, how long does it take, or how long should senators have to properly consider candidates for a position like this?
Well, Mr. DeVizio, I've served on the Senate before. I've never seen anyone governor take so time, or the governor we currently have take so much time to appoint a board of regents. I know that we've had our ups and downs at Western New Mexico University, and I'm sure she's trying to pick the right person. But when we've had these applicants for, throughout the whole session, at least, we should have already been prepped to put someone in.
Can you just walk me through quickly, like when you get a nominee in front of you, what are you looking for? What qualities are you looking for? And what does an ideal candidate look like?
Well, we definitely want someone that can read a budget. We definitely want someone that knows WNMU or has attended WNMU. We definitely want someone that has great leadership skills. We want someone that thinks out of the box, because at a university like Western, we need someone that can relate, but also look forward to see what bigger and greater things we can do at WNMU.
Okay, now in session right now, Senate Joint Resolution 7 proposes a constitutional amendment that would require the governor to select a regent for nomination from a list provided by a nominating committee for each university or community college. That bill was reported out of the Senate Rules Committee with a do pass recommendation, but it hasn't seen any movement in over a month now. Would you support that change if it came to the full Senate?
Mr. DeVizio, I probably would. At this point, I haven't seen it, and this is the first time I've ever heard of it. But just right off the bat, thinking off the cuff, I probably would support something like this.
This whole situation, of course, began after the discovery of lavish spending by former university president Joseph Shepard and the subsequent buyout plan of $1.9 million. The Attorney General filed a lawsuit over that severance package. Do you support that lawsuit?
You know, I wish that I could say yes or no, but I wasn't in those talks. I don't know what was said behind those closed doors. I don't know what kind of verbiage was exchanged between the attorneys. All I know is that we need a board and we need it soon. I wasn't serving at the time that all this was going on, so I have some information, but most of that information was given to me through the newspapers. You know, there was an audit done. We received information some information that was in that audit through the media. How often does that happen? Usually when there's an audit done, they go to the university, they speak to them about their findings, they give them a chance to rebuttal and let them know why they did it, and then move on. And if it's something that's really bad, then there's proper procedures to remove people if that's the case.
Now, another measure in the legislature right now already passed the House, HJR 12. It would ask voters to approve a constitutional amendment that creates more guardrails for regions. It would codify regions' fiduciary duties, move proceedings from removing regions from the state Supreme Court to district court, and it would allow the Attorney General or a majority of the board to initiate the removal of a region. Are those changes that you would support?
Mr. DeVizio, I'm actually on the Senate Education Committee where I'm the ranking member, and I have not heard or seen this bill as of yet, although I will entertain a bill like of this magnitude when it comes to our Education Committee.
Okay, one final question, Senator. I appreciate your time.
Sure.
As the senator representing Silver City, where of course WNMU is located, what have you heard from people there about the perception of the university, about the perception of this process? Where is the community at right now with this?
You know, I've got plenty of constituents that have talked to me about this issue. They want to move forward. They want to make sure that that WNMU doesn't continuously be damaged by this type of reputation. We've already lost students that stated their parents didn't want to send them to WNMU because of what's going on currently, and we got to put a stop to that. We've lost some great prospects to come over to play football and basketball and baseball that were really looking at Western New Mexico University and changed their minds because they really didn't think that WNMU was stable. So we got to bring back the stability and move forward.
Senator Gabriel Ramos, thank you so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you. God bless her.
Thanks to Senator Ramos, and thanks to everyone else who contributed to the show. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.